Zuma will face charges relating to allegations of corruption when he appears at the Johannesburg Specialised Crimes Court tomorrow. 34-year-old Zuma is expected to be charged in connection with his alleged involvement in the Gupta plot to bribe former Deputy Finance Minister Mcebisi Jonas. At the time, Jonas was allegedly offered the position of Finance Minister as well as a bribe of 600 million rand. On Thursday, Duduzane travelled back to South Africa from Dubai, this for his brother's funeral, which took place on Friday. He was then briefly detained at OR Tambo International Airport. His lawyer, Rudy Krauser, has assured the Hawks that Zuma will present himself at court tomorrow. Duduzane Zuma is also due at the Randburg Magistrates Court this week to face separate charges of culpable homicide relating to a fatal car accident in 2014. Zuma's Porsche 911 ploughed into a minibus taxi, killing one woman and seriously injuring another, who later died in hospital. Zuma, who has previously said his car hit a puddle of water, is contesting those charges. Well, for more on this, I'm joined by Karyn Maughan, legal journalist with Tiso Black Star. Karyn, welcome. Thanks for your time. So, really, a myriad of charges lay in wait for Duduzane Zuma, including that charge of culpable homicide, as I was reading. But this appearance tomorrow particularly is around the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act relating to the Mcebisi Jonas claims. Just talk us through this charge.
Well, essentially what we understand is that it's going to be framed in terms of a conspiracy charge. We know that the evidence before the state, before the public protector at the time, Thuli Madonsela, was very much that Duduzane Zuma had been a very pivotal part of arranging this meeting between the Gupta family and Mcebisi Jonas on the 23rd of October 2015. We'll remember that Fana Tlongwana asked Mcebisi Jonas for permission to provide his phone number to Duduzane Zuma, and we all then saw those SMS messages which were sent back and forth arranging this meeting. We know that the Hawks have CCTV footage from the Hyatt Hotel where Fana Tlongwana and Duduzane Zuma met with Mcebisi Jonas, subsequently took him to the Saxon World estate, and there it was there that, of course, Mcebisi Jonas alleges that he was unlawfully offered this position of finance minister and essentially told by RJ Gupta that the family had made huge amounts of money from the state, but that treasury was a blockage towards their business interests, and that essentially they wanted a pliable finance minister in order to do their bidding. Of course, Duduzane Zuma very much denying that this is what happened, acknowledges there was a meeting, but says that Jonas is in fact lying about what happened there.
Well, reports are that Duduzane Zuma was warned not to come back, but he had to come back in terms of tradition and family burial rights and all that for his brother. So my thinking is that he knew the risk, and it sort of says to me that in knowing the risk, they've got something planned to counter the risk. So in other words, they're prepared to face the music. Do you think this is the case?
Well, interestingly enough, I mean, at the time at which he arrived in South Africa, he knew he had a summons on the culpable homicide case, which, given that there was no evidence at the inquest that he was either drunk or speeding at the time of the accident, you know, that the speed cameras were unable to capture any evidence that concretely showed he was speeding. I think his lawyers were at that stage pretty confident that they could successfully get him acquitted on that case. We know that there were kind of discussions between his lawyers that they were trying to speak and get assurances from the NPA, but at the absolute last minute, the lawyer who was representing him in the culpable homicide case, his mandate was withdrawn, and Duduzane went to the Gupta's lawyers. So he went to Rudy Krauser. So it was a very last minute thing. And I don't think they were necessarily prepared or could go to the NPA and say, we want undertakings from you, that if he appears in court, he's not going to face a myriad of other cases. They didn't get those assurances. I know from speaking to insiders involved in the whole process that President Zuma, former President Zuma, was incredibly concerned that this would happen, that his son would be arrested. They have a very close relationship, and he had expressed a great deal of concern and actually said to Duduzane, as we understand it, do not come back to the country because this is what's going to happen. So in many respects, what's happening now is a manifestation of the former president's kind of worst nightmare scenario.
Ajay Gupta, who allegedly made the actual bribe in terms of the SABC Jonas situation, he's the first accused, but he's still at large. So if things do go ahead with Duduzane, which looks as though they are, it will be sort of the most high-level charge yet in this whole Gupta state capture saga.
Absolutely. I mean, we know that the NPA has the Estina case in court, but at this moment in time, before Duduzane steps into court tomorrow and officially is charged over this Jonas incident, the highest level Gupta that we have actually facing charges is Varun Gupta, the nephew of the Gupta brothers.
Yeah.
Of course, we saw that in the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court, the magistrates there saying that he relaxed the bail conditions for Varun Gupta and raised serious concerns about the level of evidence. The Guptas are very triumphant in that particular matter because they've successfully thwarted 3 different asset forfeiture processes, with the last one with Judge Philip Loubser turning around and saying that at this point he did not believe that there was enough evidence to warrant a conviction and therefore a forfeiture of the assets subsequent to that. So the NPA has got a bit of, had a few devastating body blows in terms of their prosecution.
Yeah.
The fact that they've now got Duduzane Zuma in the dock, facing the charge around this pivotal SABC Jonas allegation, which, lest we forget, is the allegation that kicked off the public protector's investigation, was really the genesis of the public's awareness of how serious so-called state capture is, will be a big plus for them. And they'll want to show that they have a case and that they can present a case that he needs to answer and can possibly be convicted on. We need to know the exact nature of the charges. Is he facing conspiracy? What is the nature of the corruption charges that he faces? But if it's a blatant kind of corruption case, he faces a potential 15 years in prison. And lest we forget, his father is in the dock in a few weeks' time, also facing corruption charges. So those parallels between father and son and the regime change in South Africa and what's happening with our courts at the moment will be something that is profoundly interesting, I think, to all South Africans.
And he's extremely vulnerable because when his father was president, he was protected, and now that's no longer the case. So what happens after tomorrow, as you say, is going to be extremely interesting to watch.
Well, I mean, I think the NPA is under a lot of pressure. There has been a public perception, and I mean, Sean Abrams has come up against this and vehemently denied in the Constitutional Court, for example, that he was essentially serving as Jacob Zuma's puppet and would never charge him. We saw Sean Abrams making a decision to charge that the president should face these corruption charges, and we now see the state pushing on the prosecution of Duduzane Zuma. It must be said that given the humiliation of what happened with the Estina matter, the NPA really needs to show the public that, yes, we've got the evidence, we've got the facts, we can take the cell phone records, we can produce a case, we can use as Jonas evidence, we can produce a case that results in a conviction. And I think otherwise, unless they are able to do that, there is a real danger that the public will say, well, you've just switched from one master, which was President Zuma, and now to another perceived master, which is President Ramaphosa. The NPA needs to show we have the investigation, we have solid evidence, we're going to pursue this case without fear, favor, or prejudice, and we're going to get convictions. And that's the only way I think they know they will convince the South African public that indeed they are functioning as an independent and credible organization.
You have spoken to the legal team representing Duduzane. How are they feeling?
I think the big battle that will play out in court tomorrow is this issue of his passport. I think that they have been told informally that this case is to do with Jonas. At this stage, they don't know what the charges are. The NPA is suggesting that they won't necessarily oppose bail if they can get hold of Duduzane's passport, which of course for him is a worst case scenario because it means that he's basically trapped in South Africa. He didn't want to come back. There was reluctance. He came back for his brother's funeral. And I think there's an awareness from his legal team that this might not be the last case that he faces. So the big battle that plays out tomorrow is really going to be about this issue of the passport, and I think they are going to attempt to push back in whatever ways they can to try and prevent that passport from being taken from him. However, if that's what they need to do and that's what the court finds, I think they may well have to realize that this is what they need to do. I think what we also will see tomorrow is that they're going to say, well, you've had over 2 years to prepare yourself for this investigation. We're not allowing postponements for further investigation. We want this trial to run as soon as possible.
Yeah. Karyn, thanks very much. Karyn Maughan from Tiso Black Star, thank you.